And to go in a proper sequence, let's follow this diagram here. So we are talking about these slash commands. Okay, now the thing is, there are a lot of inbuilt commands which we can use, and also you can create your own commands. So basically, if you want to pass a command, you have to use slash, and then there are a lot of commands available. So there are some built-in commands. You can you can use clear to clear the entire session. You can use compact, model status. All these are inbuilt. There are many more. Then there are bundled skills. So these are the kind of prompts which are pre-built, and again you can use them like review, simplify, batch, debug, and then you can create your own commands if you want. And if you are working on a complex project for a longer time, you will do that. So there are different options. Now we have used certain commands before. So we have used init, which will generate the Claude.md file. We can also use memory, and I think we have talked about memory as well. So we have Claude memory, which is Claude.md, and then we got auto memory. We can access there. And when you use that, so if I go back here, and if I use memory here, you can see it will show you the different options. Now we got Claude.md file in the .claude folder. And let's say if you have a memory inside the user memory, if you want to change it, you can say enter, it will open it, and then you can make the modification. At this point, we don't have any there. But if I go back to memory, and if I open the project memory, okay, we don't even have content here. Where do we have all the content? Let's open this. Here we have a content. So we can make the changes, we can refine it, and we can submit it. So that's how you can use the memory part. Then you get something called permissions. Now, if you remember, when we were doing certain things, it created this setting file where you can set the permissions, you can set allow and deny. You know, one thing I found, so basically when you work with memory and when you open it, remember I said my Claude is freezing? That's not the case, but you have to close this to access your prompt back or your terminal back or the Claude code back. So when you try to work with the permissions, it will show you the permissions which you have allowed when you are doing certain things. So if I execute a command, or if I do something and then if it is asking me for the permission, should I run npm command every time or this time? When you say every time, don't ask me again. It will set that permission. If you want, you can also set the permission by yourself. You can add a new rule. So at this point, the only permission which is there is web search. You can also set at what point you want it to ask every time. You can add a deny list. What command should never be executed? So those things you can set in the permissions. At this point, we don't have any, and that's why you can see everything is empty. But once we start working with it, you will see the options here. The next command we can talk about is the context. Now let's go back to context and let's see what it says. So when you hit context here, so you can see what it says. It's visualize the current context usage as a color grid. Okay, so at least we'll get something in color. And okay, we also have a logo in color. Let's see, it's taking some time. Now, since we have not done much with this, and maybe I have cleared the conversation before, this is the context. Now, if you remember, whenever we talk about any model, every model have their own context window. What's the size of your context window? At this point, for this particular model, which is Opus 4.7, the context size is 1 million tokens. So you can have 1 million tokens. And it's not like just because you have 1 million tokens, you will be using the entire context. It will start hallucinating if you use more than 80%. So it's better to clear the context before you hit the 80%. Now, how this context is increasing. So every time let's say if you open a chat window, maybe on Gemini or Claude or maybe OpenAI, and if you keep chatting with it, so it remembers what you have discussed before, and all this thing goes into a context. So every time you talk to the AI model for a new chat or maybe a new message, it will send the entire chat history in the context, and that's how it knows what you're talking about, right? So context is important. It's good that you can send everything, but the problem is, since you are sending everything, you are filling up the entire space. You are filling the entire context. And then at this point, it will start hallucinating. And that just happened in the morning. So I was talking to Claude, and then I realized I had a lot of conversation with the Claude before in the same chat. And then I was basically doing some research on a topic. And then I realized it is hallucinating because it was giving me wrong answer. Initially, I was not knowing that it was giving me wrong answer. When I read it, something was fishy. So I did my research on Gemini. I went back to it and said, you're wrong here because this thing does not exist. Oh, sorry, it was different. It was saying that this exists and this is getting deprecated. And I said, no, it is not getting deprecated. It still exists. It still exists there. And we had a good chat. We had a good debate. He was like, I know why you're doubting me, but I'm very sure that this is getting deprecated. I was like, no, it's not getting deprecated. Even in documentations, it's saying it is not deprecated. And you're saying it's deprecated. So it was hallucinating. And then I got to know I had a huge chat with it before. So don't do that. And at this point, this is the occupied space. This is the empty space. You have a huge space available here. But just because you got 1 million token doesn't mean it's all available to you. This number of tokens is already occupied. So system prompt, so by default, Claude Code will send its own system prompt to the model. 9K is consumed there. Then system tools, 19K is consumed there. Memory files, including your .claude file or the claude.md file. Skills, not occupying much. Then messages, since we have not done a lot of talking, it's only 402. This free space is available. So the moment I start talking, this will fill up. And maybe we'll keep doing this. We'll keep checking the context, how much is occupied. Now, what if it is 80% filled? Now what you will do? So the idea is, see, when you work on a project and you will say, hey, when I work on a big project, of course, the context will be full. Yes, it will be. And that's where you can have some good practices. The first one you can do is, instead of using the same chat window or the same session for the entire project, what you can do is you can break down your project into small chunks, right? The features. For each feature, you can have one session. So let's say you're using a session, you build the feature, and now you want to move to the new feature. At that time, you will have to go for a new session. For the new session, you will get the empty context window or context usage. Now the thing is, empty means does not entirely empty. This will be occupied, but the other part will be empty for you. So it's better a new session for a new feature. That's one. What if you are in the same session and now at this point, 80% is done? Okay, so I have a solution for you. Let me go back to the diagram. So let's say usage is about 80%. For me, I would prefer to get it at least 75%, not 80%. I will not even wait for the 80%. I don't want hallucination. So at this point, if it is the same task, of course, you can't open a new session just because your context window is full. You're still working on that feature. So if you're working on the same task, you can use something called Compact. Now, Compact, what it will do is, it will look at the entire conversation and it will create a summary of it. And then that summary will be saved. So let's say you have consumed 10 units, and after summary, it will take maybe 2 or 3 units. But there's a problem with this. What if, while creating a summary, it has no idea what are the important parts, and in the summary, it has not included 1 or 2 important points? Now you're losing that, right? So what you can do is, look at the conversation. You can ask Claude Code to do the Compact, it will summarize, but you can also mention, you can write a message there, something like this. I can go back here. So let's say I want to use Compact now because 80% is full. It's not, but then let's do it. Not enough message to Compact. So it says you're doing it on empty. But let's say I'm going to just show you. So you can use Compact here, and then you can pass a message as well, which is an optional custom summarization instruction. So in this, you can mention these are the important points. Please include this in the summary. Okay, so whatever important APIs you want to talk about, the flow which you want to talk about in the conversation, which you think might be lost in the summarization, do that. Mention that here, that include this. So this is how you can use Compact. But only do this when it is same task. Okay, so if you're summarizing, the session continues and the context is freed. But what if you hit 80% and now you want to work on a different task? In that case, I would suggest to open a new session. Or if you don't want to open a new session, you don't want it extra work. Sometimes the work is done, but you want to stay in the same session because maybe you have named the session, and yes, you can also name a session. By default, the sessions will not be named. It will be named with some initial text. It happens with the chat model as well. When you use Gemini chat or Claude chat, on the left-hand side, you will see the messages, and the first few words are the first few words of this message itself. But you can rename it, you can change it. So in this case, you can simply say clear. Now what clear will do is it will just clear the entire context. So you're freeing up the space. But remember, even if you free it, claude.md will still be there. And one more suggestion, I think we have talked about this before. What if you are in this session and then you want to ask a question which is not related to the project? Maybe you want to understand a particular API or maybe a particular class which you're working with, and you don't want to include that in this session or in the conversation. So you can say / by the way, and then you can type the message. Now in that case, that part will not be saved in the conversation. So you're not consuming the context. Okay, so context management is very important. Then we can talk about the next command, which is model. So if I go back, and I think we have talked about model before, but let's do more. So when you work with the model, you can see you will get different options here. For Claude, you will get the Sonnet option, which is by default. And Then we got Opus and Haiku. Now, every model have their own importance here. Of course, the best model is Opus 4.7. No one can beat it. The problem is it will consume a lot of computing cycles and the tokens. Okay, and we have to take care of tokens now because AI companies are charging like anything now. So tokens are very important. So the moment I say that, it's not like you will not be using Opus anytime. You will always be using Sonnet. In fact, what if I say Haiku is the cheapest one, less number of tokens, and it's very cheap. It's also very fast to answer. But will you use Haiku just because it is cheap? The thing is, everything has their own importance. When you want to build an application and when you are architecting it, when you're creating a plan, the best thing to use is Opus. Once you got your plan ready, once you have the entire instruction set ready, once you know which module will have which features, once you know everything and now it's time to generate the code, then you will be using Sonnet. And now maybe you want to test your code. In that case, you can switch back to Haiku. Okay, so that's how you can do this switching part here. And how do you switch now? It's very simple. Just say /model, come back here and switch. There's one more thing here. Just because you're selecting a particular model, in that model as well, there's different things here called, if you can observe, when I choose Opus here, it says X high effort. So now if I use my right and left arrows, I can change it. So there's something called high X effort. It will take maximum efforts and maximum tokens. Then you can use max, which will take less number of tokens compared to high X high. Then we got low and medium, high effort. So we got different options. In fact, it goes in this sequence. So left hand side. So X high, medium, low, and then max. I think max will take the maximum one. We'll see the chat. You will get these options in Sonnet as well, but I think high X is not in Sonnet. It's only in the Opus. And when you go to Haiku, it says effort is not supported in Haiku. So by default, whatever you work with. So I'll stick to Sonnet, and that's how you can change the models. So let's go back here, and you can see we got different models here. Haiku, simple edits, quick tasks, cheapest. Sonnet is default, daily work, balanced cost. Opus only for the complex architecture. And if you want to run multiple agents, orchestrate, that works. Then there's something called Opus Plan. You can also write this one, but you will not see that option anywhere. So it's not a model basically. So model is Opus, but what you can do is when you're typing model, you can write Opus Plan here. Now it will get into the Opus mode for the plan, and for the rest of the session, it will go for the Sonnet. So this is a good option. When you know that you're in a plan mode, it should be in the Opus, and in the other type of work, it will use Sonnet. But let's talk about the cost as well. Yeah, max is higher, my bad. So it's low, it's short, scoped, latency sensitive task. If you went for medium, it would reduce the token usage compared to high. I would prefer high because it's a balanced token usage and intelligence. You will get both. X high if you want it to work on a complex task or a complex code, and max if you have a demanding task. I never tried max when actually working on it, working on the project experimentally multiple times.